Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of the ongoing video about all of my recent tournament experiences that I've had with the Tyranid Codex. Part 1 was everything that has happened since the Codex dropped, but before the nerfs and Nephilim came out. And this is part 2, where after lots of experimenting and trying to figure out the kind of style that I wanted to play with Tyranids, post-Nephilim and post-Tyranid nerfs, in this land of now ridiculous scoring Necrons and Sisters and really difficult to kill Chaos Marines. So basically, I ended up playing in 2 tournaments kind of back-to-back, both of which being majors. And we'll go over how I did in both those events. So first off, my list that I ended up running and settled on, I basically, talking with the guys at Charity Hammer and trying to determine what kind of stuff I really wanted to be running, I came up with running Behemoth. The game after the nerfs and balance updates and everything essentially has shifted away from shooting into a lot more combat-focused armies. Eldar and Tau are no longer ridiculously present. They're still there, but they're not as big of a field as they were when Nids were stomping around. And because of that, with the addition of Chaos Space Marines being a decent army, and them being very combat-focused, I basically wanted to run Behemoth because of their stratagem to fight on death. It essentially counters a lot of the current meta, and with Behemoth being able to fight on death with literally my entire army, because everything is either a character or infantry, I did swap out my secondary trait away from reroll charges into the lurk trait of naturalized camouflage, which gives you an additional +1 to your save as long as you are receiving the benefits of cover from a piece of terrain. That's a lot of stuff to basically say. You don't get it if you're also running the Hive Fleet, that, you know, if you're running Jormungandr and you count as being in cover, you have to be receiving that cover from a piece of terrain. However, what that does allow is your monsters who are getting shot through a forest, who are touching dense terrain, are -1 to hit, and they actually get +1 to their save, which is pretty cool. But this list is a double patrol. So I essentially am running the Reaper of Obliterax Flyrant still, because he's just that good. Honestly, actually, I'm considering cutting him, but we'll get to that. But Reaper of Obliterax Flyrant, and he does have 3 Tyrant Guard to protect him. However, I do not want him to be my Warlord, because I have to throw him forward, and I really don't want him dying and me losing my Synaptic Imperatives really early. So even with Tyrant Guard and being able to overrun him, honestly, I still don't want to risk him dying at all. So because of that, I'm actually running a double patrol, and I am also bringing Swarmlord. So Swarmlord has to be your Warlord or your Hive Tyrant, but I chose Swarmlord because he's going to be much safer. In fact, I want him so safe, I gave him 4 more Tyrant Guard to protect him. Now, the really nice thing is these Tyrant Guard that are body blocking the Hive Tyrants with the Behemoth naturalized camouflage, as long as they're in cover, they have a 0-up save against ranged weapons. So people don't want to shoot them, which means they have to charge them. And if they're charging them, A, they can fight on death with Behemoth strat. B, they just put themselves right in front of my Reaper of Obliterax Flyrant or Swarmlord, which I'm totally okay with. So other big key players in the list is a Tervigon. Been having fun playing the combat Tervigon. I don't know if any of you guys have heard it. It's floated around a little bit, but is not ridiculously popular. But essentially, this is a Tervigon, and we are trying to abuse the fact that it has a really good sweep profile. If you haven't looked, the Tervigon's sweep profile is Strength User, AP3 for 2 damage, and you get twice as many attacks. Tervigon with base 4 attacks and hitting on 3s now that sweep profile is not bad, but we make it way better when we look at Behemoth and all of these relics. So you give it Adrenal Glands, it's now strength 8 in its sweep profile, or strength 15 on in combat. But then you're Behemoth, so actually it's strength 9 and strength 16 between its sweep and strike profiles, which makes it really good. And then you give it the Warlord trait for Heightened Senses, so it rerolls all hits. And you give it the Relic for Maw Claws, which gives it an additional attack, so it's now 5 strike or 10 sweep. And those strikes are at strength 16, and those sweeps are at strength 9. And then anything you kill in combat gives them an additional attack for the rest of the game, up to 3 additional. And honestly, it's just a really fun melee beat stick character that does not require any CP, because you already are rerolling hits and wounds, unless you need to go totally overboard and Adrenal Surge it and give it D3 more attacks, which can then all also become double sweep attacks. It's actually a lot of fun, and in order to keep it alive, I have 20 Termagaunts, which normally deploy basically right in front of it, just outside of the terrain, and the Tervigon kind of just deploys on a table edge. So to prevent anyone from being able to get closer to it from the other edge. And it just basically runs up a flank. And honestly, the reason I put it in the list to start is because of its Synaptic Imperative. Now that I am Behemoth instead of Kraken, speed is actually definitely an issue. And to fix that issue, I put a Tervigon in the list to get an additional +2 move on all my models turn 1. Not quite as good as Kraken with a flat 8-inch advance, but still actually makes a huge difference. And since he was in the list, I decided to have fun and buff him up. So 20 Termagaunts, again, to body block it. And because of that, I have 3 monsters in my list, 2 Hive Tyrants and a Tervigon, none of which can be shot until you get through their screens. And those screens are actually really hard to get through in shooting because of the additional save to cover. Now, the Gaunts you only need to kill 6 of to be able to shoot the Tervigon, because it's a squad of 20 and you require 15 to be able to body block. But like I said, most of the time the Gaunts are actually out of line of sight, and the Tyrant Guard are up front in the ruins, having a 0-up save. Final character, Neurothrope. Not a lot special here, but I did give it the Directed Guidance Warlord trait to give out +1 to hit, because despite the nerfs and everything, I still cannot give up my 2 9-man bricks of warriors. I just like them too much, and I got them all nice and painted and finally figured out for the previous events. So I had all these warriors that are boneswords and death spitters. Let's keep running them. Except now I did finally put the venom cannons in, because they play differently in this list than they did in the Kraken one. In the Kraken list, they would hide behind a building, auto advance 8 out, so they'd fly 15 up the board and charge something. And they were very much a counterpunch unit. Now in this list, they're actually they're the only guns in my list. It is 18 warriors with 6 venom cannons. I don't have any other guns in the list other than Tervigon and Gaunts. But the nice thing is, you put one unit in one building, you put another unit in the other building, or you put them all in the same building, because I gave them flesh hooks, so they ignore vertical distance for terrain. So you can go on a 2nd floor and a 3rd floor, shoot everything, and then dive out with no consequences, which actually is super useful the way most tables play terrain anymore. And basically, you have +1 to hit and reroll 1s to hit on 1 unit of warriors, and reroll all hits on the 2nd unit of warriors, and you actually have a decent fire base. And because they're all standing in a ruin with +1 to their save, they all have a 2-up save base for when they get shot. So because of this, I do not have Zoanthropes in my list. I don't need the Invuln, because everything just has a really good save against shooting. And honestly, so then stuff dies in combat, but then I fight in death and do a ton of damage. The list actually, I love the way it plays. I love the way it feels. And the final thing that goes into the list is 15 Adrenal Gland Hormagaunts. These guys are just some turn 1 pressure if I need it. They're really good against Eldar and Orcs. Not so great against anything else, but they can actually kill they can kill any like single model as long as it only has a 3-up save, and not 20 plus wounds. But against even a knight, they will do 15, 16 damage to it, because for the one turn that I'm going to actually send them out, I give them +1 to hit, reroll all hits, and +1 to wound from the Behemoth Psychic Power, and then +1 attack with Adrenal Surge, and suddenly you have 60 attacks, hitting on 3s, rerolling, Strength 5 with +1 to wound. AP 1 for 1, but 60 attacks, you end up doing something like 20 wounds at least to even T8 guys, and yeah, they're bound to fail at least 10 or 12 of them. I believe, actually doing the math, you actually do 15 wounds to a knight, is what I remember the math being. So yeah, they've picked up things like Wraith Seers or small tanks, or any infantry squad that only has a 3-up base and like 2 wounds apiece. A Marine squad just dies. And the hilarious part about this unit is, if I get first turn, I can spend the CP, auto advance them 6 up, and they move 19 because of the Tervigon's +2 move. So they go 19 across the table, charge something, and then just tie up your opponent's movement. They charge something, kill, and then spread out and movement block turn 1 right in front of your opponent's deployment zone. And if you can grab terrain, then great, because all they're shooting, your Gaunts are suddenly in power armor and have a 3-up save. And they don't want to waste the heavy shooting against them. So then they charge them, but Gaunts fight in death for 1 CP, and they still have all the buffs that you gave them from the previous turn. So it can actually be a unit that punches way above their weight for 150 points. Yeah, I've had them kill tons of stuff. These 2 events actually not quite as much, but in previous practice games, they've certainly punched above their weight. Their main downfall, and the downfall of this list, is essentially a lack of AP. So that is definitely a major concern against all the Armor of Contempt armies or Custodes. If getting through 2-up saves, or even worse, 2-up saves with Armor of Contempt, a lot of your stuff just bounces off, because the warriors are only AP 2, the Gaunts are AP 1. So the only things in your list that have AP are the monsters, which Swarmlord, the Flyrant, and the Tervigon can definitely do a lot of damage, but they're basically going to have to do all the damage if you end up going up against something like Custodes or the giant 10-man Terminator brick that hides in cover with -1 to wound, and that fun thing that's been running around. But yeah, so that's the list. Again, I'll just do one last quick rundown of all the units in it. You've got a double patrol with a unit of 3 Tyrant Guard, a unit of 4 Tyrant Guard, Swarmlord, a Flyrant with Reaper of Obliterax, a Tervigon that's all combat buffed with 20 Termagaunts, and then a Neurothrope, 15 Hormagaunts, and 2 bricks of 9 warriors with Adrenal Glands, boneswords, venom cannon, death spitter, flesh hooks, all the fun stuff. Yeah, and that's it. Like, it's actually only 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 units. So when you deploy, it actually feels really small, but everything's really powerful and durable, which is great. So let's get into the events and talk about how I did. First event that I played in was Major in Hobbytown. It was, what was it called? It was like the Fight Club Major, I think is what it was called. But it was held in Hobbytown, Westminster, here in Colorado, so it was really nice for me. I only had an hour drive to go there instead of the 8 hours that it normally takes me to go to events. And yeah, this was a 6-round major event. We did have War Games Live there streaming, which is phenomenal. Joe's stream's amazing. Subscribe to him on YouTube, please. He's amazing, and he's great. Anyways, round 1 was against Travis playing Sisters. So again, we're in this new meta where Sisters and Necrons can score real easily with all of these secondaries. And Travis is playing these Sisters, and round 1, what mission were we playing? He's playing Bloody Rose, of course. Lots of Repentia that get to fight in death, and Morvenval, all the fun stuff. But we're playing Mission 12, Tear Down Their Icons. This is the one where you can deploy bombs in your opponent's territory. For secondaries, I took Cranial Feasting, Raise the Banners, and Engage on all fronts. Cranial Feasting and Raise the Banners are kind of my go-tos, as well as Psychic Interrogation. However, Travis was running a Canoness that has 2 denies on a 3-up. So I elected not to take Psychic Interrogate as I normally do against his army. Travis taking, of course, the secondaries for Sisters. He took Leap of Faith, Defend the Shrine, and then Retrieve Nephilim. In this game, I did get Travis got first turn and basically played incredibly defensively, essentially just moving a few units forward onto the center. I think he just put Celestine on the center objective and then kind of shifted forward a little bit, but not enough to fully commit. However, the downside of what he did was he did shift forward a little bit, and he actually left a gap to Morvenval. So my turn, I popped the +2 to move strat, so my Flyrant's moving 19 base plus an advance. I do successfully cast Onslaught safely outside of deny range onto the Flyrant. It charges in and kills Morvenval, turn 1. That's obviously a huge swing really early. And then to just add salt into the wound, the problem with my list is it starts with 0 CP. So I got 1 on his turn, and then I got 1 on my turn, and I basically ran forward, spent a CP for D3 extra attacks to make sure I kill Morvenval, and I do, and then I gain a CP to overrun back to safety, which was huge, because I would have been okay with trading the Flyrant for Morvenval, but because I rolled the 4-up on Cranial Feasting to get the CP to overrun, I actually was able to trade for free, and that's a real good trade. Ask anyone. So yeah, I scored 7 points turn 1 on Cranial Feasting. I don't remember what other character I killed. I know I killed Celestine, but she stood back up. So yeah, I got 7 points on Cranial Feasting turn 1 though, as well as to engage. On his turn, he held his 2 objectives, but I did kill Celestine off the center and put OBSEC on there to contest it. But Travis does get his 4 for Leap of Faith and 3 for Defend the Shrine turn 1 and 2, as well as 4 Nephilim data. And so at the end of turn 2, you're already looking at him having 8 primary with with 14 secondaries on turn 2 already, which is just showing how good these Sisters are. However, at this point, I start pressuring his objectives, and I basically only leave him his home objective in the backfield, and my board control becomes insane. So my turn 3, I get a max 12 primary, whereas Travis only gets 4. Turn 4, he's able to fight over the center at least, and I only get 8 primary, but he only gets 4. And then turn 5, I've now swarmed the entire board, managed to basically table the Sisters, and I have 12 points to his 8 on primary. And because of that, at the end of the game, Travis has scored 24 primary, I have scored 40. And in secondaries, Travis scored 11 on Leap of Faith, 12 on Defend the Shrine, and only 8 on Nephilim. I did kill lots of his infantry super early on to try and negate that. And then for me, on my secondaries, I scored 12 on Cranial Feasting and 10 on Raise the Banners. Unfortunately, I only scored 6 points on Engage. We were forced to basically fight at midfield, which meant my guys weren't across that 6-inch line, which honestly I kind of forgot that you have to be wholly within outside of 6 of other table quarters rather than just across the halfway line now. But I do end up winning that game 78-65. And then round 2, I go up against Joel Davis. He is also from the other Colorado team, the Mile High Militarum, and he's playing Ulthwé. However, he's playing a very unique Ulthwé list that I've not seen before, and I believe is unique to him. It's really fun, but it's 3 Wraith Seers, 2 Wraith Lords, the Avatar, all with D-Cannons, and a D-Cannon support battery squad of 3, Eldrad, and some Rangers, and I think 1 squad of Guardians. And maybe and I think 1 unit of Shining Spears. But it's mostly the 3 Wraith Seers, 2 Wraith Lords, and the Avatar, as well as a bunch of D-Cannons. Well, in this game, Joel wins first turn, and let's see, I took Bring It Down, Psychic Interrogation, and Banners, and he took Assassinate, No Prisoners, and Engage. We are playing the Scouring, which is 5 objectives, all kind of in the center, Hammer and Anvil deployment. However, his turn 1, he moves forward, he shoots and kills, I think, 3 Tyrant Guard out of the 7, as well as, I think, 8 of my Hormagaunts. And doesn't do a lot else. I think he kills 1 warrior. And then on my turn, however, the other thing is he rolled 5 sixes on his Strands of Fate dice. So for turn 1, he had 5 saves, which meant my turn 1, when I come out to shoot at him, my warriors move forward with +1 to hit and reroll all hits. So even when he makes himself -1 to hit on his D-Cannon batteries, my warriors are still hitting on 3s, rerolling everything. And then somehow the entire squad shooting at those D-Cannons do not even pick up a single battery. I do 4 damage. So yeah, 1 goes down to 1, and all 3 of them are still alive. And that was without him using his Fate dice, because he ends up saving those for where my Flyrant is very obviously about to charge a Wraithseer. My Flyrant then does charge the Wraithseer, knowing that he has all of the saves. I have 5 attacks and he has 5 guaranteed saves. But I figure I'll do the D3 extra attacks, and if even 1 gets through and I do 6 mortals, then his guy's just dead. Unfortunately, that is not what happened, and somehow hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, wounding on 3s, I did 2 wounds with my 7 attacks. So I did 2 wounds, which he just auto-passed both, and I did all of 2 mortals to the Wraithseer. And then on his turn 2, he had 3 Wraithseers. All 3 of them jumped on top of the Flyrant, and his D-Cannon batteries shot the 9 warriors that came forward into terrain to shoot them. And because they're blast weapons and it's a 9-man warrior squad, their 3d3 shots becomes 9 shots, and picked up the entire 9-man warrior squad. He did 9 wounds with his 9 shots. He gave him +1 to hit with a CP, and then I think used an auto, maybe a CP reroll to wound, but he got all 9 wounds. I had a 6-up save because I had a 2-up in cover, but they are AP4. And of these 9 wounds, I rolled 1/6, which is average, but that meant that 8 of my 9 warriors died, and then he also did 3 mortals by rolling 3 6s to wound, so the 9th warrior died. So my 9-man warrior block ran forward with full buffs to hit, couldn't kill a single support battery, and then the support batteries shot back into my guys while they're getting +2 to their save, and picked up the entire unit. But hey, it's a dice game. And so yeah, they all died, and then the 3 Wraithseers charged and killed the Flyrant. I spent my 2 CP that I'd been saving to fight in death with the Flyrant to at least finish off the Wraithseer that completely tanked, and somehow did even worse. I only did have 5 attacks this time because you can't get the bonus on the turn that you get charged. But my 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, now exploding 6s, somehow did 1 wound. Wounding on 3s. And yeah, I just rolled really bad. So 2 full rounds of Reaper Flyrant punching a Wraithseer did a grand total of 3 damage because he also had a save and he just auto-passed the 1 save that I made him take turn 2. So yeah, he killed, I believe he killed my Reaper Flyrant, all the rest of my Tyrant Guard, all but 4 of my warriors, all in turn 2. Just D-cannons are really good against my army. And the one thing that I had that was good against his Wraithseers didn't actually do anything. To finish the game off, Swarmlord charged the Avatar, 9 attacks, 8 wounds. Avatar makes 8 out of 8, 4+ invulns. Doesn't take any damage. On the bright side, Avatar swings back and Swarmlord only fails 1 save and ignores it, so also takes no damage. So I can't completely complain, but I still did nothing and he was up tons in terms of models still left compared to me. So at the end of turn 2, I'm already down like 1,400 points worth of units, and I have killed nothing. So the game quickly snowballed out of control, and I was just obliterated. So Joel ends up winning round 2, 95-37. Then round 3 is against one of Joel's teammates, another Mile High Militarum guy, Luke Perkins. He is playing Chaos Marines. This is my 2nd game ever against Chaos Marines. First one being against a teammate, Colin K, who's been making some waves with his Night Lords recently. But aside from my 1 game against Colin's Night Lords, this is only my 2nd game against Chaos Marines. And he's actually running Iron Hands, which ignore cover. So that's real good against me because kind of my whole thing is the fact that I get double cover and he just ignores it. But yeah, trying to remember what all he's running. He instead of the 10-man Terminator brick, he has a 10-man unit of Chosen, which are basically a lot cheaper, still 3 wounds per guy. They just don't have they have the wound Rune of Damnation for -1 to wound. They just don't have the 2-up save. So they're not quite as shooty. I'd say they're the same killiness in combat for probably 2/3 or half the points. The other thing that he's running is crazy punchy Demon Prince that lots of people are running with the Corn or Nurgle relic that like auto wounds at flat 3 damage. And then he's running 3 Obliterators and the Master of Possession that can resurrect Obliterators on a psychic spell that needs a 5 for some reason. Needs a 5 to cast and can resurrect a guy from an entire Obliterator from 24 inches away. It's real good. But in this game, we were playing Death and Zeal, and that's just 5 objectives, standard placement, and you get 2 points for getting a new objective or killing a guy off an objective, and 3 if you do both. It's normally pretty easy to get secondaries or get that extra primary. But for secondaries, I took Cranial Feasting, Psychic Interrogation, and No Prisoners. And he took Psychic Interrogation, Assassinate, and No Prisoners. So very similar secondaries. But in this game, I did win first turn, and I basically ran forward. I don't actually remember what I killed, but it was a decent amount of stuff. I believe I actually came forward to try and kill the Obliterators. I threw my Flyrant forward, and yeah, he had the Obliterators in the front. And I'm like, hey, if I can pick those up early, he loses almost all of his shooting. Unfortunately, he's Iron Hands, so he has access to a strat of -1 damage. So he popped that and kept 1 Obliterator left with 2 wounds out of the unit of 3. Because of the -1 damage strat, so he lived. And then on his turn, he was able to successfully get through my deny on healing that Obliterator back to full wounds and bringing a second Obliterator back, making it feel like my Flyrant basically did nothing. His Chosen then came to fight out in the center, and we just had this massive battle between 9 warriors and 10 Chosen, all in the center. He was also running 2 squads of 5 possessed, which I think my warriors shooting chipped like 2 off of each squad. And then my Hormagaunts and his possessed kind of duked it out over an objective, and all just kind of mutually killed each other. But with this, essentially this is to say I ended up having incredible board control because I got to go first, and I just swarmed 4 of the 5 objectives and had a presence everywhere. And Luke was forced to come out and fight me. And he had to fight on every single front and every objective. Basically I made nothing easy for him. And so because of this, I scored 8 on turn 2 and 12 on turn 3 and 4. The 20 Termagaunts being replenished from the Tervigon. I believe I even used the Endless Swarm regenerate strat in order to steal the center back, because I think he killed 16 of the 20 Gaunts, and then I used the Endless Swarm, got 5 Gaunts back to put them back into range of the Tervigon, which then rolled a 9 and brought 9 more Gaunts back, and the squad's back to full and suddenly on the center objective, outnumbering him, and so I get a 12 on primary. Fun little tricks that you can do. And because of that, I got a 12 on primary turn 3 and turn 4. However, my turn 5, I'm basically tabled. I think I literally have a single Gaunt left on a top left corner objective behind a building so it can't be shot. And I have a Neurothrope on my home objective. And other than that, I'm tabled. But at the end of turn 5, I do still have those 2 objectives, so I score 8 at top of 5. Whereas Luke, he only gets 4 on primary turn 2 and 3, but then he completely maxes 15 primary turn 4 and 15 primary turn 5 because he gets the extra 3 for direct assault, resulting in him having 41 primary to my 45. And then in secondaries, I scored 12 on Cranial Feasting, I scored 10 on No Prisoners, and I scored 12 on Banners. He scored 13 on Assassinate, 14 on No Prisoners, but only 3 on Psychic Interrogation. I was able to deny all but 1 of his interrogates, which meant at the end of the game, final score was 89 for me, 81 for Luke. So even though I was tabled turn 5 and was basically tabled turn 4, I did manage to basically have enough scoring early that I still managed to win on points. And Nids are really good at that. So it's honestly, it's a really fun way to play. Your opponent feels good because he killed your entire army. Maybe feels a little cheated that he did that and still lost, but it is a points game. And you feel good because even though you lost everything, you played the mission, and it's a fun way to win. Round 4 was against Paxton playing Blood Angels. Paxton basically was running 3 giant bricks of Sanguinary Guard and then a whole bunch of MSU deep striking assault marines and terminators to go get secondaries. But essentially just had this massive core that started on the field of the Golden Boys and a chaplain on bike and apothecary. And basically what he ended up doing is turn 1, I won first turn, and I just jumped on. I put Swarmlord into 1 unit of Sanguinary Guard with a pretty decent advance. We were playing, what mission was it? Conversion, mission 22, where you have the circle in the middle. So because we're only 18 apart from each other, I basically deployed on the line saying, hey, come charge me. But then I won first turn, and he also deployed on the line. So my turn 1, Swarmlord did just a little advance and was able to charge a unit of Sanguinary Guard. And my Flyrant was able to just regular move and charge the Sanguinary Guard. Psychic powers, I put Paroxysm on the unit that was going to hit Swarmlord, as well as I gave Swarmlord Catalyst. So that way, the Reaper Flyrant charged one unit of guys, killed like 5 of them, and then the other unit interrupts and hits Swarmlord, but because I debuffed them and buffed Swarmlord, they only do, I think, 5 damage to him. And then Swarmlord goes and picks up 4 of them. So I don't kill either squad, but I severely wound both of them and basically take out a whole bunch of Sanguinary Guard right off the bat, at which point he then swings back and we just end up with this massive battle in the middle where the Apothecary is suddenly resurrecting all of these Sanguinary Guard, and the Chaplain is doing Noble Sacrifice, saying, hey, you all have to fight me, but then popping the 3-up invuln and just tanking everything, making it where I do absolutely nothing for a turn while his Sanguinary Guard just wail on me, and then popping it again next turn, except without the invuln, but he still survived with 2 wounds left, and then the Apothecary healed him, and there's basically just that combo of Apothecary Chaplain was actually amazing to see, and it stopped my whole army for a really long time. Unfortunately, that's all in the center, and what was going on the edges of the board was my army is basically picking up all of his little units that are deep striking in just to get objectives, and so because of that, I end up winning a ton on points, where I get a 12 on primary turn 2 and 3, an 8 on turn 4, and once again I'm basically tabled on turn 5. However, my opponent only got 4 points on turn 2, 0 on turn 3, and then maxes 15 on turn 4 and 5. And then he gets 14 for no prisoners, 12 for Nephilim, 8 for engage. I get 12 on Psychic Interrogate, 14 on Cranial Feasting, and 14 on no prisoners. And how that results is a final score of 91 to 67 for the Tyranids. So I'm now 3-1, having only lost to the Craft World. Going into round 5, I fight Tristan, who won Best Painted with his Necrons, and he basically has a Halloween pumpkin themed kind of King of the the Nightmare King from Nightmare Before Christmas. He's got that whole theme going on with his army, and it's absolutely gorgeous, really fun theme, and he does end up winning like favorite painted army with that theme, and it's great. However, Tristan is very much a hobbyist and not much more of a player. He was getting carried along by Necrons just being able to score a ton for him. However, once he ran into me, we're playing Mission 31, Tide of Conviction, and he takes the standard Necron, Purge the Vermin, Code of Combat, Treasure of Aeons. He's got Silent King. He's got all sorts of fun stuff. And then I take Banners, Interrogate, and Cranial Feasting. But basically, I end up getting first turn, and I completely swamp him, and he's locked in his deployment zone. Anything that pregame moved got eaten in combat, and anything else is stuck in his deployment zone. And yeah, he just wasn't able to score the objectives like he was used to doing with the Necrons, because I had him penned in with so many units that I end up actually completely dominating this game. And the Necrons, they're still the old codex in terms of stats and stuff. So even though they score really well, if they can't move anywhere, then they get shut down. So with that, I scored max on primary, and he only got 8, if that gives you an idea. He scored 4 turn 2 and 4 turn 3, and then he was gone. And then as far as secondaries, he got 5 on Purge the Vermin, 7 on Code of Combat, and 7 on Treasure of Aeons. And yeah, I got 15 on Cranial Feasting, 9 on Psychic Interrogation because I had him tabled turn 3, and 15 on Raise the Banners. So final score is 94 to 37. And that means I'm now going into round 6. And I am 4-1. In round 6, I end up playing Justin Kemple, who is running Ynnari. He's actually won a few RTTs and placed, I think, 2nd or 3rd at a GT with this Ynnari list. It's a very strange one that has a webway gate as well as the D-Scythe plane and basically one of each kind of... I never know the Eldar guys, but the super elite warriors. He's got 1 unit of Warp Spiders, 1 unit of Striking Scorpions, 1 unit of Shining Spears, all of those guys. He's got 1 of each. All the Exarchs are buffed up, as you do. And then basically 10 Guardians all coming out of a webway portal. But he also has 15 Dark Eldar Hellions and then 5 Kabalites in a Venom just to sit on his backfield objective. And finally the Ynnkarn, because he's Ynnari. This game, I got first turn and he redeployed his Striking Scorpions into what he thought was a safe spot, but my warriors rolled really high on their advance and basically got to hop onto the top floor of the center building where I could suddenly see him again. And they just shot and picked up the entire Striking Scorpion squad. And basically then I'm sitting on 4 of the 5 objectives. And on his turn, he brings the Ynnkarn in, goes and kills a whole bunch of warriors with it that were in the center, as well as his Shining Spears go in and between the 2 of them basically pick up the whole 9-man warrior squad. But on my turn, I basically kill everything except for the Ynnkarn and his backfield Venom. His stuff is pretty fragile, but then his Hellions and Guardians come out of the webway, shoot and kill a whole bunch of Gaunts, and put some damage on Swarmlord. I think he brought him down to 4 before Ynnkarn then basically teleports away onto his backfield objective to kind of keep him safe. However, my Tervigon was over there, and I don't think he knew how much damage the Tervigon could do. So my warriors shot and chipped away at him, brought him down to 8 wounds between all my guns on that last fully buffed warrior squad. And then the Tervigon charged in, and even though he had 3 saves from his fate dice, because I guess Ynnari get those now, he had 3 saves on his fate dice. Well, Tervigon goes in, has its 5 smash attacks, gets all 5 through. He uses his 3 auto pass saves, but then fails the other 2 even with a CP reroll. And the 2 that go through, I roll max damage on each. So 6 damage for each of them, halved down to 3. Doing a total of 6 damage. He had 8 wounds left, is dropped to 2. And I had the 20 Gaunts charge in as well, just in case. And sure enough, the 12 Gaunts finish off the last 2 wounds on the Ynnkarn and kill it. So at this point, Justin's already down to his turn 4. He has his Venom on a backfield objective and I think some Hellions left. Everything else is dead. And yeah, then my turn 5, I basically play cleanup and end up winning the game 87-72. So despite Justin losing tons of stuff early, he actually played exceptionally well with the secondaries and did a ton of damage. So he got 12 on Retrieve Nephilim, 10 on No Prisoners, and 15 on Hidden Path. And then he also got 25 on the primary. I got 45 on the primary, 10 on Banners, 10 on Engage, and I actually took Warp Ritual because he only had the Ynnkarn as a character. As well as, I think, 1 Farseer, which I didn't want to try and interrogate either because they were both Psychers. So I took Warp Ritual instead. So yeah, final score was 87-72. So at the end of the tournament, after 6 rounds, I am 5-1, having only lost in round 2 to the random Eldar Wraithlord list. And point-wise, I end up in 3rd place. The event was won by Marshall Peterson. Again, he got 100 points on every single game with his Necrons. He did not fight someone with my army that was able to just jump on top of him. So he was able to get max 100 every single game. And then second place was Colin K with his Night Lords, which phenomenally done to him. I was going to go into my second tournament, but you know what? This video is already 45 minutes long. So I will call this one here, and I'll just make a part 3 that has the tournament that I just played in this weekend over at Salt Lake City. Talk to you then. Thanks.